Hello, I'm John Feldt, and this is the weekly water outlook for Texas and the southern region for May 5th, 2013. Well, most of the action this week has been off to our north, to our northeast, and to our east. Been really dominated the entire week by this area of closed low pressure, and this area has been very pesky. It's produced some very heavy snow, record snow. It's produced some very heavy rain and record rain. And it's somewhat unusual to get these this time of year, but it's certainly not unheard of. And when you get these areas of low pressure, they really dominate the weather. They produce sort of their own weather. Jet streams well to the north, but yet this system is producing a lot of weather impacts over parts of the nation. Wanted to show you some of the streaks of moisture here, and you can see them here. This is 1, 2, 3, at least 3 streaks of very heavy precipitation. But they originated east of our area for the most part, starting sort of in the eastern parts of Kansas received some rain, but mainly east of our region. If we take a close-up of the precipitation over the last week, we see across Texas very light amounts of rain. The areas there in gray have received no rain whatsoever over the last 7 days. There was some scattered rain right in the center part of the state, and that was up between a quarter or between a half inch and up to an inch. Maybe some really isolated areas. If you look closely, that area in yellow is 3 inches, but it's very isolated. But if we go up to the north, that's when we started having the impacts at the upper low. You can see parts of Oklahoma, parts of Kansas, and then east did receive more rainfall and snow. Keep in mind that was in the colder air, so much of that was in the form of a very unusual late season snow. You might have heard of the record snow in parts of the area, including Colorado. So soil moisture, same old story. Despite getting some precipitation, soils are generally very dry over the western half of the south, and then over the eastern half they're very moist. And it's really pretty amazing how abrupt this change is. It's very abrupt with wet soils in this area and very dry soils in this area, and then a transition right through the middle where they're a little bit closer to normal right here in the middle, but a very abrupt boundary between these dry soils and the wet soils. Like you might suspect, if we look at precipitation or rivers, the areas in red are indicating stream flow well below normal, areas in blue well above normal. So we have areas of very low drought conditions as far as stream flow goes, and not too far to the east we see these areas in blue and black, and those are either very high stream flow or near flood stage. Now, I mentioned snow. I wanted to show you how close it really came. Sort of parts of Colorado, parts of northwest Oklahoma, parts of Kansas, generally light snow. So there was snow fairly close to the region, parts of Kansas, and much of that's already melted. Snow that falls this time of year is gone very quickly, and you can see here that there is a band of snow still in parts of Missouri, and that'll be gone today as well. But for the south, across Oklahoma, Kansas, the areas that receive snow, that snow is now gone. In Colorado and the higher elevations, there's still some snow in that area. There are some floods, not in our region, but I did want to show you further off to the east. Stream flow is quite high. We have our upper Midwest. This is our winter, spring snowmelt flooding. This is very heavy rain has brought flooding in this region, and then more recently in the southeast U.S. But as far as the south, Texas, the story is definitely more low flow than high flow. So let's talk about this week a bit. We're in a positive Arctic oscillation. You wouldn't think of it with a lot of cool temperatures over parts of the area, especially east with that low pressure. But that low pressure is moving off to the east now in northeast. We're going to have a jet stream that is initially going to be well to our north. And with that positive Arctic oscillation, that's why it's lifted up to the north. But it looks like by late this week that will begin to dig down towards the south, and it'll bring a bit of energy into the deep south. I think this is a really interesting forecast this week because I think there's a lot of uncertainty for one thing, and I'm going to probably issue an update on this again tomorrow just to keep a close eye on it. But there is the potential of this front that comes down with the dip in the jet stream to bring enough energy and with moisture in places to produce some significant precipitation over Texas. And that's going to be the big question this week. You can see here, mid to late week with the frontal passage, there is the possibility of fairly heavy rainfall over parts of the south. including the central part of Texas and the eastern half of Oklahoma. I tend to think this is a fairly iffy forecast right now as far as timing and especially the amounts of rainfall, so I'll have to keep an eye on it this week. But definitely there is that possibility, and for most of this area this would be a welcome recharge type rain event as more rain is needed. Now I wanted to look out a little bit further. This goes out even further. This goes out towards late May, and just sort of pick out some of the general weather trends here. And you can sort of see what areas are generally wet and what are dry. And this model goes out pretty far, so it will be changing over time. But I did want to point out that generally speaking, it does look like the wet anomalies could be brushing this area of the south here, the eastern part of Oklahoma, eastern Kansas. Most likely the eastern part of Kansas could be quite wet. Perhaps brushing up into northeast and far eastern Oklahoma and this part of Texas. On the other hand, we have strong dry anomalies over far western Texas and perhaps southern Texas after this week as well. So those are some of the general type trends as we get further out into the month of May. Soil moisture anomalies, changes, sort of see no strong pattern one way or the other. Blues are indicating soil is getting a little bit moister, browns are a little bit drier, but I don't see any strong patterns here. I don't see any real deep blues or any real browns. So the takeaway point this week, I think the main event to watch this week will be when that upper jet stream begins to dip further south. That's going to bring a cold front through, a series of fronts actually, and that could cause a significant rainfall event late in the week. Now, I will be updating that, and if I have any information on that in a little bit more detail, I will be issuing some special information on it. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me at any time, john@bluewateroutlook.com, and I will be updating this again in about a week.